So there's lots of conversations out there these days in the social webs about polyamory, monogamy, different relating styles, different ways of loving. And what we thought would be really useful is to dive more into the nature of sacred union and what does it mean to relate to yourself, to your partners, or to the outside world. And our goal isn't necessarily to persuade that one way is better than another. We all have individual truths. We're here to inform so that you can make empowered choices in your own agreements. So let's dive into all of these various relating styles.
Welcome to a new paradigm, a new way of being, free from shame, self-limitation, or cultural programming. Welcome to a new you, a new world full of endless possibilities. Welcome to your Tantric awakening.
Welcome to the Tantric Awakening podcast. My name is Andre.
And I'm Kendall.
And today we're diving into polyamory, monogamy, sacred union, and the whole spectrum of relating styles. Yeah, a lot of stuff out there lately, and you've probably been reading a lot of opinions on either side. I think the best place to start, even before you start thinking about do you want to involve other people or not, widen your relationship or not, start with why are you doing this? Is it curiosity? Is it the drive? Why are you doing this? Because I see a lot of couples, and we do coaching around this area, and I see a lot of couples, they set the goal to be polyamorous. And that's where I think a lot of issues start to come up. Well, am I inadequate? And maybe a lot of these questions doubt, rather than from just, well, we're a partnership, we're a unit. Maybe you meet somebody that enters that unit. Most of them become friends. You have like circles of people you relate with. Maybe somebody comes into a deeper circle. But like you take it day by day, agreement by agreement, as your life and situation changes. I guess what I'm getting at is the conversation really should begin with like communicating boundaries and needs and desires, like the basic communication that you would think you would have in a relationship. Like if you don't have that to start, just a place where you can communicate around these topics, you're way too fragile in your relationship to explore anything else. I don't know, those are my initial thoughts. What's been coming up for you? I know you've been following some of this dialogue.
Yeah, there's a lot in the spiritual community right now around different relating styles and certain words attached to that. And it's been something that you and I have been talking about and reflecting on. And not only that, but we have up and personal have witnessed this not only in communal experiences and witnessing people in different relating styles, but we have gone deep into these conversations ourselves. And there are so many layers to relating, because relating is how we all are in this world. We're relating to each other, the earth, the sky, like everything's relatable in some way. There's a way you can emerge or submerge yourself into experiences. I mean, this is part of our makeup as discovery, at least, and exploring. And so when I think about these words like monogamy, from polyamory, and on the spectrum, because there's so many kinds of terms that people align with, the baseline I keep feeling and experiencing and witnessing is that it's based off of people's experiences, not only from like childhood and what they were modeled, but also I think it really speaks to a lot of people's curiosity. And not only curiosity, but curiosity to understand what does it mean to relate, like you mentioned. And I think that's why it's so powerful that we're going to be talking about today, like the power of sacred union, soulmate union, because I truly believe we're in a revolution around that. And I've been personally, as a woman and as a priestess, been really leaning in to that from within myself, from the research I've gathered, and also the lineage of the mystery schools around the Venus herself. And so, yeah, I'm excited to discuss that.
And you touched on a few interesting things. Yeah, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
monogamy is, in the grand scheme of things, a fairly recent invention. And it comes down to your definition. You're very right about that, because we hear so often of cheating and infidelity in relationships.
Mm.
You know, haven't seen the data on it, but I would guess more so in monogamous relationships. So is it better to put a label on yourself and cheat and be dishonest with yourself and your partner? And also, like, I mean, this might be a bit of a funny view, but I kind of view monogamy as serial polyamory. You still have multiple partners, you just have one at a time. But most people don't stay in one monogamous relationship for most of their lives. That's becoming rarer and rarer. So most relationships are somewhere on that spectrum already, you know? So there's like a lot of people, like when you mention polyamory, there's a shock value to it. You know, when really, if we look at how we relate and how often agreements are not made and assumed, there's a difference between assumptions and agreements, or broken. Most people's relationship is already somewhere on the spectrum between the two, more realistically than completely on one side or the other. So a lot of it is kind of an argument of semantics, of words. You mentioned this when we were kind of thinking about this episode. You said one thing you have to be careful of is projecting expectations. You know, so first you really got to start with knowing yourself. And if this isn't an existing partnership rather than the new partnership you're forming, you really got to know your partner. It really starts with looking within. You got to find your individual truth and figure out your relating style.
Mm-hmm.
And I think many people dive into this kind of without having done that inner work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, or they have done that inner work, but they haven't gotten their partner to know their partner well enough, so they're automatically projecting and assuming their partners is the same.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you need that communication.
Mm-hmm.
Desires, boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with you and I, we never found it difficult to have those conversations. I remember even like from early on, like we enjoyed diving in and exploring topics like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, we took the time to get to know ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's many layers to this whole conversation around these relating styles, from monogamy to polyamory and what that looks like. And this also can even be related to the love languages, right? And how people give and receive love. It can also be related to the erotic blueprint and how people experience erotic love inside of romantic relationships, right? So there is a spectrum along the lines of all this. And it is interesting, you know, to that point you were making of like monogamy, and there's so much to it because monogamy has evolved throughout time, and not only evolved throughout time, but depending on species, it's various species are more prone to monogamy than others. And it's really interesting because at the core of it, and this is my personal belief is that at the core of anything is, are you present? Are you present to the devotion that is in front of you? And not only in front of you, but this invitation, are you committed to you? Are you fully devoted to yourself? Because when you are in a devotional relationship to yourself, you are then able, I believe, in a deep, deep way to receive a soulmate union, right? And you can consider the other. And I also think that's where, when it comes to anything beyond monogamy, there are multiple layers to that in, for example, capacity. There's so much that is related to people's capacity that is a part of this conversation as well. Like, is someone capable of dealing with the emotional depth and challenges that come in relationship? Is someone able to alchemize these emotions that come through, like anger or fear, any of these experiences within the body? So yeah, for me, I'll speak onto my personal journey, because that's the journey that I'm most intimate with in my own life, is in preparing for this conversation. One of the things I've been really reflecting on is this conversation of just how much my childhood impacted me and what I surrounded myself with. And I encourage all of you listeners to really consider this as well, because I also believe a lot of what we experienced or bared witness to in our childhood impacts our adult life and adult relationships.
Absolutely.
I personally grew up in a household, mom and dad, and, monogamy full through and through. And I didn't know anything different from that. And it's very much the majority. Monogamy is the majority in the human world. And that's how I also heard what is acceptable in my Christian upbringing was monogamy. So when I started to really discover my eroticism, and in partnership with you and leading into it in such a deep, deep way, is when I really dove deep into all these different sort of relating styles. And I remember from the beginning, even in our relationship over like 3 years ago, I don't know within the time frame, but I remember witnessing, talking to you about the vulnerability of even having feelings for other people. Like, what does that even mean? Because when you have a construct of what is the normal, our brains can go through a challenging confrontation when you're confronted with other options, like anything in life. And so it's been a really wild journey. And I've gone from the spectrum of bearing witness to multiple relationship styles to even just like really cherishing like what is monogamy, and not only that, but like soulmate union, and really having those structures and boundaries to protect the union. Because I have personally witnessed, especially as a very much connected to different realms and different energies as an empath, I have very much felt that inner like protector within soulmate union to respect the entity that is you and I together, which is what happens when two people come together. It's a powerful, energetic composition. So,
well, that's exactly it. We as human beings, our emotions, our moods are fluid. And it would make sense that our relating styles and our needs and our challenges are constantly shifting too. And I think that is the issue, is it's the label. People are getting stuck on hanging a label on themselves when it's what you said. It's an agreement between two people, but it's an agreement that is constantly evolving as you are evolving and changing, that needs to be revisited. It needs to be a living, adapting thing. I was speaking a couple years ago at the One World Tantra Festival,
Mm.
And there was a couple that were doing a workshop on polyamory. And what stood out is they had been together for 40 years.
Hmm.
Their relationship stood the test of time.
Mm-hmm.
And naturally, the first question that they were asked was, well, what are your agreements?
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of chuckled and they said, you know what? Every time we've made a long list of rules, there are always exceptions that come up to test the rules. So we gave up. At first, we started revising rules. Then we
Mm.
gave up writing rules. And we just stick to one very simple rule: respect for each other. Never deliberately harming the other. Constantly checking in with each other, making sure the person you cherish most is okay. And everything else, they just kind of negotiate on a case-by-case basis as it comes up,
Mm.
you know? And I've seen, you and I naturally navigate that space. Sometimes we have our moments. Hey, is this okay? Are you okay? It's moment to moment. And I would even say, even in a monogamous relationship,
Mm-hmm.
hey, how are you doing? How's your day? Are you okay? What's
Mm-hmm.
present in your heart right now?
Mm-hmm.
All across the spectrum. Even if you're monogamous, you should be practicing this on a regular basis with the person or people you cherish most.
Mm-hmm.
It's connection,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Security and trust are built from connection, and you got to have those things in place.
Mm-hmm.
The worst thing you can do is run to polyamory if you're in a crisis. Oh, our relationship, it's gotten boring, it's failing, we need to spice it up, add a little fire. Emergency crisis intervention, that's usually doomed. That's at least according to statistics. It more often than not harms or ends the relationship than fixes it, according to statistics. Um, the stereotype is these types of relationships are every man's fantasy. Men, some questions you might want to ask yourself. How happy is your primary partner? Can you handle more? More financially, more emotionally? And I hate to break it to you, the statistics say the opposite. The relationships that are more than monogamous, that do tend to be longer term and stand the test of time, are the ones initiated by women. The
Mm.
statistics are pretty clear on that.
Mm-hmm.
It's either the woman is in a relationship with a man and meets somebody who happens to be a man or a woman that she likes,
Mm-hmm.
and that becomes integrated into the relationship,
Mm-hmm.
or it's two women that already know each other that decide to bring a man in.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the ones that tend to last, at least according to statistics. It's not the ones that are like the male driven more. It's like I said, like some people set the goal, okay, now we're going to be polyamorous. No, you become polyamorous if the need arises in your relationships and it's congruent with your boundaries, desires, and agreements.
Mm-hmm.
And it should be said that there's a difference between agreements and assumptions. A lot of arguments erupt based on assumptions that are treated like a broken agreement. Agreements need to be made. Two people need to sit down and,
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling this. How does that make you feel? Are you comfortable with this? Why or why not? Can something be done to make you more comfortable with this? It's like, if you're in partnership, it's consideration of the other.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the agreement.
Yeah, this is really interesting because when it comes to relating or relationships, it's really important to recognize that there is a human with a lot of experiences, emotions, likely history in relationships. And with that, it's very important to, if you're already in a relationship, provide yourself the authentic truth of, for example, with your partner, being intentional about what your intentions are, like being clear with not only yourself, but expressing that to another. Because here's the thing, like what I have noticed in light of these dynamics of being able to meet people or meet people to play with, or for example, perhaps have a desire, for example, thruples, I think it really comes down to being real with yourself about what it is you're able to hold, right? And really taking inventory of how you're relating to not only yourself, but the relationship. Are you going deep? And are you going through initiations together? Because what can happen is I have processed so much in my own relationship with you and just bearing witness to this, but if you aren't going deep within your relationship to another and then you desire, and then somehow you're bringing in somebody else, like that could in a way be like a superficial kind of exchange and not necessarily one of depth. And because we live in a very like online culture nowadays, because we live in like a swipe culture where you can like easily sign up on these applications online and meet people, I think it's really important just to be doing, like you're mentioning earlier, the inner work, because it is also, people can feel when you want something out of them.
Oh, yeah.
And in these, like, when it comes to like relationship, it's really important to know that you are loving yourself, right? Really meeting your own needs and being clear about those core needs, because one person for so many of the population is enough in devotion at a time, in the sense of like romantic. And I think it's important for people to just be wise, especially if you're in a couple, to just be wise about your why and how you are navigating such conversations with each other, right? The more transparent, like fantasy, for example. When even throughout our relationship, I've expressed so many of my fantasies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really interesting because it requires a vulnerability. It requires like I would love to experience this, and would you be open to this? And we've experienced this in the context of like you and I, just like what experiences we would want to experience together. And we've allowed that to kind of expand to, wouldn't it be cool to have this kind of experience? And often, I'll be honest, the universe has surprised us with experiences we never planned. But in the end, what I've noticed, even if you have experiences with other people, the biggest thing, and this is where I have a core passion for ethical relationships, ethical anything, especially hedonism, all the things, is that you are deeply connected with the reality that a person has a soul and that they're here for divine mission, and that they are here because they are here to learn about how to relate with people. And I've seen this too in relationships, even in growing up around people and people in relationships. There's a lot of people in monogamous relationships that on the outside it looks great, but on the inside there's no depth. There's a lack of soul connection, or in the sense of like understanding them at a core level. And so many people have made monogamous relationships about like utility or, meeting various needs beyond anything from like procreation or anything like that. Like, it's interesting.
Or almost
Just like,
transactional. You do this for me, I'll do that for you.
Yeah. And honestly, like, perhaps it's because I'm a romantic at heart. This is speaking for the romantic at heart. What I've learned in relationship is romance, and there's a dance between romance and devotion, because devotion requires courage. And that's what I'm seeing at the core of all these kind of like, regardless of these titles, it's are you devoted to loving this person for who they are? Are you devoted to meeting them in the shadows? Are you devoted to meeting them when you want to run away, right? When your childhood wounds are being triggered because your partner's reflecting your wounds that your father or your mother used to share or show you. Like, it's another level. And so many times, I mean, we've had so many moments even in our relationship where we have been so challenged. I have been so triggered. We have fought. We have done it all. And what has really helped me realize is like, oh, like the depth of relationships or the depth of relating is really truly taking accountability for yourself. Even not only self accountability, but like acknowledging when you've betrayed yourself, or even acknowledging where you are changing, like even the vulnerability of change. I mean, say someone comes into a relationship and they're monogamous, that's what they want. And then they're considering something else. Like, that's vulnerable. Like, I can imagine so many people here that are listening are in that vulnerable space. Yeah.
You've thought of it. You don't know quite how to bring it up.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. Start by exploring your partner's fantasies and your own. A lot of people are afraid to have this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You guys just give it a try. It's sizzling. It's enticing. They're fun conversations to have. If you've never done it, it might be a little intimidating at first. But once you get over that hump, like, these are stimulating conversations. It's a turn on.
Yeah.
And the more you do it, the easier it gets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One other aspect I wanted to bring up in response to this is I feel like the core need, and I keep seeing this in relationships with others and clients we have, the biggest thing that people are looking for is safety and trust.
Yep.
And if that's not being experienced like on a visceral level, like I'm talking about serotonin is being, is being expressed, the brain chemicals, the dopamine, all the brain chemistry, like if safety and trust are not there, this is why I think a lot of people in some way like polyamory challenges so much of safety and trust to a degree. Because I think a lot of people are not feeling safe or trusting of maybe even themselves or the other, which I would lend to that person. Go within yourself, like love yourself. And I'm saying this from experience because I've been challenged in so many ways in this space. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let's speak into some of that because, like, for example, you touched on some of it. Like, people assume that polyamory people don't go deep or they're afraid to go deep. I would say it's quite the opposite. It forces you to go really deep. And, are we in sacred union? Absolutely. And I would say, it's not like you decide you're poly and you post a application to fill a job position. It's sometimes somebody comes in and, oh, this is a magical being. Does it resonate mutually? Does it? I can't think of an experience that didn't bring us closer together in some way. And even like you said, the ones that sometimes maybe led to a disagreement or a challenge to work out, still in the end brought us closer together, led to a deeper understanding. So I would say it's been the opposite. It's like it's allowed you to dive deeper into yourself and into each other. Another myth is that, poly people never experience jealousy.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's just we don't spend most of our time trying to avoid it. We know it'll happen and we talk about it often.
Mm-hmm.
And you process through it. And something else that was surprising, like I can think of the first like play party experience, there we had a lot of conversations around jealousy to prepare ourselves for what might come up. And my first emotion really surprised me because it was the opposite of that. You know, um, just the welcome when we come into the foyer, and right away there's like this kiddie pool with the balls, and you lay down and you relax, and right away several gentlemen walk up, and you have two men, one massaging each hand, two men, one massaging each foot. And I was just like, oh, wow, the grin on your face is priceless. And the word for that is compersion. It's the opposite of jealousy. This is the other emotion. When your partner's joy actually brings you joy. And the funny thing, Kendall? When I was preparing my notes for the show, I couldn't even find it in the dictionary.
Hmm.
Like, that's not even in the dictionary. Most people don't know about it, but that, sometimes you get that emotion.
Mm.
I love watching you enjoy yourself. It's, it's hot.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I can think about that experience years ago and uh, the very initiation of itself of me exploring puja and just what that even means in relationship to intimacy. And I have to say I've very much evolved since then. And I know you have walked that path with me. And it's been a journey of, death and rebirth, tears, ecstasy, revisiting my own code of conduct of ethics. And yeah, I mean, it's a point of celebration because I remember that moment being like, yeah. But yeah, I've also noticed there's also a distinguishing energy personally that I've been noticing between just the difference between, how do I say this? Like, I have over time in our relationship develop a deep reverence for what is devotion and what is soulmate union, and also like calling us higher, even calling you higher in this relationship. And why is because I feel like I have felt so deeply connected to this collective unconscious shadow in relationship to this whole scene. It's very much the forefront of the spiritual community right now, especially like different kinds of relationship styles. And the biggest thing that I keep feeling is like, there's this deep observing of, even in calling woman forward, to just be really discerning about what kind of experiences you want and being very clear about that, because I'll be honest, I'll be the first to go in the vulnerability conversation. Like, even in our relationship, I've explored interacting with, for example, other men, women, and you have given me that freedom to explore that. But what I've even noticed in relationship, especially on the earlier years, I was acknowledging, even now with my more wise self, not every one of those experiences was deep. And the raw truth about that is I recognized how much I value depth. And in those moments where I didn't go deep with someone and get to know their soul and their heart and really get to know them, I reflected on that and been like, ooh, like, what is that? And it makes me really, it has made me and grown me in so many ways, but it's helped me understand, like, as a woman, what am I wanting to reflect back to the world and call people higher? And my heart as a priestess is to really encourage women out there that you truly, if your heart yearns to feel safe, secure, devoted to, it's going to require you to become even more devoted to what not only is true for you, but what you know you really deserve. And I know a lot of women out there are settling. They are allowing, for example, men in their monogamous relationship to not necessarily honor their wombs, care for them during the menstrual cycle. And I'm here to express to you, goddess, that you deserve to be surrounded by people who care for you on such a deep level. And especially if you're in a soulmate union, a man is willing to devote himself fully to you because in your devotion to yourself, there is a divine worship happening. Wouldn't you say, beloved, that like there's a difference? Like you've had a variety of experiences in relationship. Do you feel in relationship, even with me, like you have noticed even of a difference of like the more devoted I am to myself, the more you are devoted to this relationship and worship? Like how, if anything, has that transpired in this relationship? Yeah. Deep, Brett.
Really deep question. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's kind of what I alluded to earlier. The divine union is the center of our world.
Mm.
You know, I see us when we're given a business opportunity, when we think about traveling, when we think about attending an event, when we think about engaging with anyone, like that's at the forefront. Will this serve? Will this deepen the union?
Mm-hmm.
Does it bring us closer together or further apart?
Mm.
I see us making a lot of our decisions that way. And while at first it might have been like fun and interesting and new, it's like anything like that. It's like you said, like the bar got raised, you know. Not all polyamory people are swingers that are necessarily just out to
Mm-hmm.
you meet and play with anybody else, and we're not here to judge, but like for us, like first and foremost is like, does it serve the sacred union?
Mm-hmm.
Does this experience bring us closer together? So it's, when you ask me what that means, it means that it's at the center of your world and your decision-making progress, and not that you can't be two individuals. Strongest unions are made from two strong individuals, each able to stand on their own feet. Then when you come together, it's like, it's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's like 2,000,
Mm.
you know? That's what I would say. Now, there are different arrangements. You know, there's pods of 2, 3, 4 people sometimes in different relating combinations. But I'm sure, you know, a lot of times those form when there's like two sets of parents, for example, like a polycule.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they have their agreements this way, and it would basically be like the same like we're talking about, but just between multiple people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you know who your partner or your family is, and you want your family to thrive. You're a team. That's what partnership is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're not just in it for yourself, you're out there for each other, but you also empower each other as individuals.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to grow in both, to grow in love, but to grow as an individual too.
Yeah.
You know, and I think in the best relationships, you cheer each other, you support each other's success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, even in relationship with you, I have been challenged to become a better person throughout it and
Oh,
grow
likewise,
and evolve and face the parts of myself that even I was outgrowing. I mean, there's been so many moments where I'm like, that behavior or the way that I acted in that moment, I'm outgrown that. And that's what relationships all about. Like recognizing that even for us, like I recognize the evolution of you and myself over time, and it keeps me on my toes in the best way. And it's beautiful. And honestly, I found so many of our conversations day to day, it's like I'm discovering something new and always bringing some new information to you in some way. And that's what is exciting. But yeah, yeah,
I love
there's
that.
yeah, there's beauty in all of the
So,
transformations of relationship.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's just it. Stability. Most people are looking for stability.
Mm-hmm.
You know, respect, loyalty, all of these things play into this, but we want stability in our lives and in our relationships. And I guess what you're kind of alluding to is that, the premise that we started the show with, that stability comes from agreements, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily labels,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Um, People cheat in all kinds of relationships. You need your agreements, you need that respect for each other. I'm reminded of a quote actually from Osho where he was asked once about polyamory and like, how many lovers can you have? What's the right number? And he said, as few or as many as you want, as long as all of them are satiated. Meaning,
Mm-hmm.
is there enough of you that everybody's happy, or are you like wearing yourself thin? You know, and the cup overflowing sort of thing. Like, if you want polyamory, which means many loves, by the way, you guys, that's what the word means if you break it down: poly, many, and amor, love. Um, how well do you love yourself? Is that cup full? How well is your primary relationship or in a pod relationships? Does everybody feel loved? Does everybody feel valued? Like,
Yeah.
start with those relationships before you go seeking more.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like that seeking energy is really connected to dopamine because we like the pursuit. And even for me in my own inner masculinity, like when I am passionate about something, I am,
Well,
you
here's the
know,
thing. Here's the thing.
mm,
And I recently heard this on a science show. Like, everybody, of course, knows about the bonding effects of oxytocin.
mm-hmm,
And it's true, if you study the animal kingdom, the monogamous species tend to have more receptors for oxytocin.
mm-hmm,
The ones that aren't monogamous have less receptors of oxytocin, but that's not where we see the biggest differences.
mm,
It's the dopamine.
yeah,
When you are seeking relationship versus in a relationship and holding it, the dopamine actually goes to different receptors and behaves differently.
mm,
The dopamine literally hits different.
mm-hmm, yeah,
So it's interesting that you bring that up.
yeah. It's wild, and I'm very fascinated with biochemistry and just how the brain functions and how to like biohack that. I geek out on researching that. But yeah, 100%, 1,000%. I mean, even to what you were mentioning, like Osho's statement, the biggest thing I would say, and this is what I've learned from going within and like really taking a lot of time to myself, especially the last year. Oh my gosh. The more you can go within yourself and really get to your own truth or allow yourself to invite experiences into your world where you can discover your truth, because we're in this life of cause and effect, and that's how we all discover what our truth is, by going through initiations and then making mistakes and then growing and gaining those gems of wisdom. In the end, like, I look back and I'm like, because of these experiences, though some of them are very challenging, especially in relationship, I can think of like, oh my gosh, like, wow. Or going to my, being part of this group for a certain amount of time. It's really interesting because, yeah, I think there's a beauty in life to this becoming your intuitive voice and recognizing that even if other people are expressing even what we've been sharing today, like, really self-love is about taking inventory about what you're curious about and allowing that to guide you on this path, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a great point. One resource I actually want to mention for getting to know yourself,
Mm.
that I would say is required reading for anybody considering, anything outside of a monogamous relationship, is
Mhm.
the book Polysecure by 𝗂𝗃𝗓𝗏.
Mhm.
And it's not just a book about poly relating.
Mhm.
It's really a book about attachment styles.
Yeah.
And it gives you the tools to figure out which one you are. And what I really love is it describes how those patterns and those ways of attaching formed in childhood for
Mm.
each of the individual groups.
Mm-hmm.
So you can really learn about yourself, and then it gives you tools for growth beyond that. Which, of
Mm-hmm.
course, we all strive for a secure attachment, but in reality, we're all either along the avoidance scale or along the anxious scale.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people talk about anxious avoidant. That's a common one, but there's others. There's anxious preoccupied. There's avoidant where the person like totally shuts down and like ghosts you. There's scales along each one. So the first thing is to figure out how you relate, how you attach.
Mm-hmm.
Where are the securities? Where are the insecurities?
Mm.
You know,
Yeah. And this is interesting because I have danced between the anxious avoidant in my relationship with you and become more secure. I'll definitely be honest there. But it's wild because where a touching point has been in becoming more secure? It's been in allowing myself to receive touch, like actual physical touch. And I have to give credit where it's due because it's very much, I know we've talked about sacred touch on our show, but literally I had such a transformative experience with you, and even in this past week where you touched me in a way where there was no other reason but just the present moment, and the reason being that I got to fully let go and really surrender into just like, oh my God, I'm worth this. And like, it made me realize the power of like in relationship to the one, in relationship to you, Andre, the safety that you've been able to provide for me as I have evolved. And not only evolved, but even in our sacred agreements where like we've been just really focused on each other for a great amount of time, like it's made me really understand like, oh, like when you choose someone, when you truly respect someone, even in their growth portal, their transformative, sacred container, like that's just, it's really honorable. And I feel like it's required so much courage and strength on your end as a man to be like, yeah, I'm here to hold you in your healing. I'm here to hold you in and show you secure attachments, show you safety, show you devotion. And I don't know, it's been priceless, honestly. Grateful.
wow. Thank you, beloved.
Mm-hmm.
All it took was really, you said it earlier, devotion.
Mm-hmm.
Devotion. And in devotion comes a certain amount of trust
Mm-hmm.
that this person is also being divinely guided, that this person also takes your needs into account. Devotion is mutual. When you're getting it from your partner and it makes you want to give it right back to them. It's it's an energy that flows both ways. It's interesting what you said earlier about
Mm-hmm.
the brain and evolution. Actually, you briefly mentioned it, and it's really fascinating because in preparing for this show, I did a little bit of research
Mm-hmm.
into the history of how various relating styles evolved in human culture, and the root cause was actually climate change. Interestingly enough, the last time we had really big climate change.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting that a lot of the sexual awakening and sexual re-evolution is happening right around the time when the climate is again very much at the forefront of our consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
But the climate created a lot of like shifts to the savannas. The savannas are full of predators. Your chances of survival were better if you formed into larger packs, larger groups.
Mm-hmm.
Interrelating in larger groups required a larger brain, larger language capacity. So literally as our brains grew, that means more gestation time in the womb for the baby to grow. That means a longer lactation period after the baby's born,
Mm.
all to feed the larger growing brain. So the need of monogamy starts showing up as the gestation period increases to support an ever-growing brain size. People were like, okay, this is a big long-term commitment. I can't do this alone. I need a partner.
Mm-hmm.
And people kind of started to gather together. But at the same token, I know of a lot of indigenous tribes where it's normal for them to swap partners. And a lot of times when a woman is pregnant, she doesn't even know who the father is. And unlike in our culture,
Mm.
she's not shamed. That's not frowned upon.
Mm-hmm.
It really doesn't matter. The whole village pitches in. That baby may have 5 fathers, and that baby might have, 5 mothers. It's not sticking them in front of the TV. It's not calling a babysitter and leaving them alone with a stranger. Like, they're always surrounded by somebody. They're always getting attention.
Yeah.
It's a different way of raising children from our concept of the nuclear family.
Mm-hmm.
So like, for example, what you said earlier, monogamy is by far the most dominant, perhaps in our modern Western world. In the Judeo-Christian Muslim world, yes.
Mm.
In India, there's tons of stories of princes and gods alike having many lovers. Asian cultures, their legends and myths. You assume the people lived a lot like their stories of their gods, and it's quite the opposite in those cultures, and it's quite the opposite in a lot of native cultures. So there was the need for monogamy, but then at the same time, there was other cultures that explored alternate relating styles. And it's interesting because we see the very same thing reflected in animals.
Mm-hmm.
If we look at our closest relative, the primates, right? The gibbons, for example, in South America, mate for life. Bonobos, gorillas, chimpanzees are all polyamorous.
Mm-hmm.
In various combinations and ways. Not all the same. In gorillas, there is usually one alpha male and several females. For example, in the bonobos, it's quite the opposite. You see, the sad part is gorillas, they're nearly extinct because they kill their own young. If it's a baby from another male,
Mm-hmm.
this male won't tolerate it, and they usually get rid of the baby, sadly.
Yeah.
With the bonobos, women found a way around this problem. They mate with all the males. So when a baby's born, nobody knows who the father is. Nobody wants to risk killing their own kid, so everybody takes a hand in raising it.
Interesting.
So we literally see in different species of primates that practice various forms of relating the very same patterns that have grown up in different human cultures too, in different regions of the world.
Yeah.
And there's actually very few, I was surprised to learn this tidbit, of all the animal species, the monogamous species who mate for life are actually the minority, not the majority. There's so few species, we can actually name them by hand. Besides the gibbons, it's wolves, beavers, prairie voles, swans, angelfish, albatross, owls, bald eagles, penguins, seahorses, dik-diks, and termites.
Interesting.
Pretty much everybody else in the animal
Wow.
kingdom is polyamorous of some way, shape, or form. And again, I'm not arguing for one over the other, but we can see in different animal species different styles depending on how they were living and what their needs were.
Yeah.
And we see the same thing in human culture throughout history.
Yeah.
When there were threats to survival, people took on more partners. It was almost like hedging their bet. If something happens to one, there's a backup. Like, we see a lot of that developing in cultures. We see a lot of it tied to social class and social stature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Something's coming up for you?
Yeah. I also think it's also like time and season of life. Like, I know, for example, of a woman back in the day who I knew, and she just got into a throuple, and she has children. They are all grown up, but she's in this throuple experience, and they all live together, and she's having such a great time, and it's an initiation for her. And it's wild because her and I come from very like similar Christian backgrounds, and it's really interesting because it's made me really realize just like how timing has a big part of this as well, like in your personal evolution. I know I'm 32 and just feel like I'm scratching the surface of all this, even though I've had so much experience thus far. And yeah, it's just been really interesting to reflect on that from my own personal upbringing as well, because there's also this dance as well, the dance of like how purity culture impacted me so much that I went into the like connect with anyone through the freedom of polyamory, and realized, ooh, like not everyone actually cares about you. And I went through some hard lessons around that. And yeah, it made me realize like there's people that, yeah, well, I realized like, whoa, like I'm a classy, go deep, like sapiosexual kind of, not that I need the label, but you and I go deep and we just vibe. There's just energy there. And yeah, I've just realized that dance personally in my journey of like, oh, how this all relates. And never thought years and years ago I'd be talking about these different terms, but it makes a lot of sense. And it's wild to hear about the animal kingdom. Like I don't even know some of those species, but it makes me really appreciate Mother Earth's diversity. It makes me really appreciate the journey that is just self experience, like getting to know yourself and really walking, dancing your own path and allowing yourself to just remain faithful to yourself. And that like, you don't need to betray yourself because you don't have to. And I think whatever you choose to follow, or if you evolve, like amazing. Like I was actually watching an interview earlier today, and I think I sent it to you. It's people that are monogamy and but have both experienced polyamorous monogamy. And it was wild because the conversation was so respectful, and it made me realize just like how people's experiences growing up, and not only experiences, but there's a even difference between like the millennials and the boomers and how they approach this conversation as well. Because there was this one gentleman, for example, who was monogamous, been married to his wife for so many years. I know as well, because he was like, I honestly didn't even know about these terms or ways of life. Like no one taught me, but
compersion is not even in the dictionary.
Yeah. But it wasn't like, and I think it's, it was just interesting because it made me realize like everyone has their reasons. Yeah. Sure. Everyone has their choices at the end of the day of what's best for them in the moment or the season they're in. And we encourage you to lean into that too.
Well, yeah, sure. Exactly. What works for one person is not necessarily going to work for another. And I like that you spoke into that was tolerance. They were respectful for each other, each other during the show. And that's just it. You can't assume like what they often call the heteronormative mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I'm straight, so everybody's straight. No, there's a lot of queer people in this world.
Yeah. Happy Pride Month.
Yeah. Happy Pride Month, by the way. You can't make assumptions about somebody's gender identity. Ask. We're living in a world that's evolving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would like to speak into this as well, like the evolution of the times. Like we are seeing that right now. We're seeing like energies collapse that are outdated. We're seeing the progression of Pluto and Aquarius right now. We're seeing how if you're not open, you're not keeping your heart open, you're not connecting to people that are different than you, like people are literally outgrowing certain energies. Like people are leaning into love more than ever because love is truly the most healing, radical balm of the heart. Like so many of us have been grieving. So many of us have been grieving the times, like, and being like, what is actually going on? But the healing is in feeling. And not only that, I wanted to bring up this. We mentioned this earlier before the podcast. I would love to hear your thoughts on this, but I've been dancing with this dance of the cultural aspect between the monotheistic and the polytheistic, kind of how that has shaped culture. And I want to speak into that and hear your thoughts as well, because I know you have a lot of history knowledge from the time. I think it's like the golden age, you know what I'm talking about? Like all these time periods where we went from more of the goddess religion, and now we're on like total like mono religion. And like, anyways, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, yeah, no, you nailed it. The interesting thing, so much for the stereotype that all, men want to be poly and women are resistant to poly. Yes, during the more goddess reigning religions that usually consisted of a pantheon of many gods, when there were many gods, there were generally more lovers.
Is that true? Oh, really?
There's a correlation. When there is one God, as above, so below.
Interesting.
Christianity, some forms of Islam, Judaism, absolutely,
Do you think that's
more
split?
monogamy.
Do you think that split something in people's consciousness? Because, I mean, I honestly would love to understand that in a deeper way.
Well, interestingly enough, let's take one monotheistic religion, Christianity, right? Grew out of Roman Catholicism, grew out of Rome, right?
Right. Where Constantine, where he established Christianity as the religion of the state.
And they pushed monotheism, and they pushed a father, right, God in the sky type view of spirituality, monotheistic. And they very much push this idea of monogamous marriage and the kind of nuclear family structure that we have today. That we assume heteronormative, we assume everybody's like this way, but, there are other cultures, there are other places, there are other times. The Romans really pushed the idea of monogamous marriage and the nuclear family, but not for anything having to do with love or romance.
It was for taxation.
It was for taxation because they didn't have computers back then. They didn't have social security numbers. They didn't come up with this idea of assigning a number to each citizen.
Yeah.
What they had was family trees. So if you have one partner and you come together through marriage, you simply bring together two family trees. And it's very easy to trace all the branches, in-laws, uncles, cousins, to make sure everybody's paid their taxes each season. It was literally for the convenience of the tax collector. That's why monogamy was so pushed, and specifically the idea of the nuclear family.
Yeah. That's powerful. I mean, honestly, and it kind of brings everything together of even just my own personal journey of like, I'm like, when that older gentleman in the video I was talking about earlier, he was like, yeah, no one taught me these things. I was like literally listening to him. I was like, wow, like I relate to him, because there was a point where I was like, I remember when you encouraged me to read 𝗶𝗶𝗄𝗎? I was like, what?
And you didn't realize it was like I
was just
a psychology and introspection book.
Well, yeah, you're so like Carl Jung's
I recommend this
doppelganger.
to monogamous couples too. I recommend this for people that are single and considering getting into a relationship, or maybe trying to learn more about their relationships with their parents, for example. Like, this is a book about attachment styles and relating, much more so than it's a book about poly.
Yeah, it's been powerful. And it's also like speaking into understanding oneself. Like, human design has genuinely helped me so much alongside astrology. For example, I was even looking at our charts earlier today, our human design, and you and I both have open heart centers. And when you have an open heart, yeah. And I've been curious to learn more about that, but what I've learned about the open heart is like it's very like an energy where energy can come in. There's just like your heart is literally open. And I think that's why you and I, like, I've witnessed this in you, where you literally show so many people, even clients you have, like, unconditional love. And I'm over here like, wow. And I honestly think there's a correlation between open hearts to a degree, as well as perhaps that connection or willingness to perhaps, I don't know if it's like multiple lovers, but just have the capacity to love more. Like,
And
and
it
that's
doesn't come from lack. You're not, that you hit on it. You're not
Mm.
trying to fill a lack or a hole. Those are the
Yeah.
ones that self-destruct.
Mm-hmm.
You're coming from an abundance of love and you just want to share it.
Mm-hmm.
Love is
Yeah.
not a finite resource. It doesn't run out.
Yeah.
You can make more. Your body makes more.
Yeah. And I will also say too, it's like, because I think in this space, a lot of people can fawn, and I know I have had to explore this myself because I've come from a background of people pleasing. Like even in relationship with you, I've been like so raw, real, like, yeah, this is where I'm at right now. Like, I don't want this, or maybe in the future, but I've literally brought this to you. And I think not only brought this to you, but I think it's really important that we're not, just even for anyone that's listening, like be clear about what's true for you at any given time, because at least in our soulmate union, it's like, I think it's in the psyche of people. Sometimes we try to project our desires onto people when that has not actually innately come from within themselves. And that's something we've talked about this in even our relationship, but it's just powerful when you and I I'm a generator, you're a manifesting generator, but when we lock into what's true for, at least for me, what lights me up from the inside, like when I witness someone or connect with someone, if it lights me up, I lean into that energy as a generator. And I know you relate with that too. So
That's
yeah,
it.
you
And
keep
if
your
it
heart
dims-
open.
And if it dims your energy, you want to lean away. You want less of that.
Yeah.
Totally.
Because I'm a full-blown empath and you connect with that very deeply as well. And yeah, if I could say one thing about this whole podcast, this is the journey of learning to trust yourself and learning to discern your intuition, your voice, give it a voice, and express yourself and express that vulnerably to other people, including, for example, if you're in soulmate union, just being raw and real and being authentic and feeling your feelings and learning how to regulate your emotions and feel them and transmute them. And yeah, soulmate union relationships are initiations, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. That's what they're for.
Mm-hmm.
They're there to mirror back to us those parts of us that we do not see.
Mm-hmm.
Or that we've tried to suppress or tried to hide. They can be triggering. They can be inspiring.
Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah.
All of it.
Wouldn't you say even in like clients we've had, like we put a magnifying glass on we help people see themselves? Wouldn't you say we do that in our coaching?
Well, that's a key part of what we do. Like a lot of people assume coaching is about giving people advice. I would say the art of coaching is asking people the right questions.
Yeah.
Asking them questions they haven't thought to ask themselves that lead them closer to their truth.
Yeah.
It's not for you to tell anybody what their truth is or
Yeah.
what the truth is. You're there to guide people to their own truth. That's what a good coach does. And particularly, if you're navigating these fields of wanting to dip your toe in polyamory, or you're already a polyamorous couple and you need assistance with how some of the dynamics work, like this is an area of relationship coaching that Kendall and I have a lot of experience in, not only through guiding our own relationship, but those of friends and clients. Like, please reach out in the DMs. We would love to talk about what you're experiencing and, if we can offer anything that might be of assistance.
Can I say one more thing in relationship to all this? Just because I feel like we've seen this in coaching and it's perhaps a valuable piece of information. If you are on the path of wanting to explore multiple loves, which is multiple amor loves, right? My invitation as a priestess, especially because I want to speak to the men in the room, especially if you're in a partnership already and you love this person very, very much, very deeply, be real and authentic about what you want and don't have secrets. Don't try to go around and try to do things behind your partner's back. Be upfront and real with yourself and recognize if you do have those tendencies to just keep things to yourself. Allow yourself to be vulnerable, get yourself into an accountability group, allow yourself to really develop that authenticity, because this is something we've witnessed. I've witnessed even as a woman where I've like called men higher into this. And I support men. I'm very much passionate about men's work. But because we are in a culture, and we've been talking about this a lot, because we live in a culture where a lot of men are not initiated by other men, it's interesting because as a priestess, like I have part of my initiation personally as a priestess, but the role is to call these men higher, because here's the thing, like women's intuition, especially as their wild woman selves awaken and they start to develop their power from within, and they regain even sovereignty or just heal another layer from trauma. Like women's intuition is so on point and can smell these kind of like, I'll be honest with you, sleazy men. I've experienced this in the field from being out in play temple experiences, parties. I've seen the spectrum from healthy, toxic masculinity. And here's the thing, like a devoted man, a man who is wanting soulmate union, you like, if you want that as a man, no, you have to be authentic and real with yourself, because women deserve your realness. And women, I'm going to invite you as well, like to be deeply open, to holding space for men as they feel and feel their emotions, feel their feminine. I know we've talked about this before, like there's this subculture out there, and this is something I've been really, even as someone that started coaching as feminine embodiment coach, like balance and union, soulmate union, tantric union is about bringing all these energies together, masculine and feminine. And what I'm seeing even in devotion, and this has been the most intense catalyst of my life, has been learning as a woman to develop my inner man. Wild. Like the most absolute wild pace, because it's helped me understand men more than ever in this time need to be held in such sacred space to feel their emotions, to not only feel their emotions, just receive. Wouldn't you say? Like, I feel like so much men lately, it's just, we've talked about this even, like there's so much pressure on men in this world to just like hustle and do and entrepreneur and blah, 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 blah. And we work with these like really high level, high achieving entrepreneurs, multimillionaires. And I keep seeing this thing of like, ground yourself, feel your feelings, and recognize like women, if you're in a devotional relationship with a man that's an entrepreneur, just constantly going, like you are here to perhaps catalyze that man. And yeah, it's sacred work. But yeah, we need kings do the work to become more secure in themselves, to really have that backbone. I also want to speak to the man in the room here. If you're in a monogamous relationship and you play and you are pillaging other women's wombs and you are not honoring your own woman's womb during her period, that is a absolute no-no. And I'll tell you why. From a priestess, from someone who works with, I've seen this up in front and confronted men in this position. This is leaking energy, and this is not temple. This is polyfuckery, and I'm open to saying that. Because here's the thing. When I've had women come to me personally and cry in front of me in the bathroom, expressing how unmet they have been by men who claim to like love them, want to have children with them in the future, and been like literally crying because this man can't meet them in their menstrual cycle. It's like, ooh, taboo and gross. And then that same man is going and pillaging other wombs. No, that man is not connected to his femininity. That man is sucking the energy out of woman's womb. And this is a problem. And if one person if a man, for example, is like leading a ship to go play with other women at the cost of that monogamous relationship, if that woman needs to fawn in order to please a man or it's absolutely not right and toxic. And yeah.
That's not devotion. That's not respect for your partner that we spoke of. That's not checking in for their well-being and making agreements. That is absolutely the opposite of that. And that's kind of what I alluded to in the beginning when I was saying, so is it better to be all righteous and call yourself monogamous when you're breaking agreements and breaking trust behind your partner's back? And you're right, women are intuitive in that they will know. They will know when you're lying to them. They will know if you're trying to corral them into doing something they don't want to do or get them to fawn. They smell this 2 steps ahead of you.
Yeah. And
you're not being as sneaky or as clever as you think. You're just being dumb. That's not conscious relating.
Yeah. And why I'm saying this from a place of not only experience, but self-respect, because I know, I've integrated so many of these experiences by witnessing and holding space for these women. And here's the thing. It's like, what happens, and this is a huge thing, what happens is if you as a woman are with a man that is not devoted himself to you fully, you are enabling that person. You are enabling that man to act like a boy. I'll say that again. You are enabling that man to act like a boy. And I don't know about you guys. I don't know about you, love, but I am so sick of that energy. I love the inner child. The inner child's great. But if the inner child's constantly leading your ship, is a problem, because the integrated adult self, the king that rises, is going to devote himself fully to you and make sure that you are adored, met, worshipped. Oh my gosh, your body is going to receive, the cosmic touch of love. And so, and why I'm saying this as well is because this is what we're here for. We're here for those that are ready to learn these tools, like literally learn how to relate. And please take a moment after this podcast to reflect, get a journal, just reflect, to be like, what just came out for me? Don't shame yourself. Just be raw, real. And we as a couple, we have gone through death and rebirth. I have a Scorpio Pluto conjunction, or Pluto moon and Scorpio here. Transformation, death and rebirth is part of why I'm here. But conscious relating skills are absolutely needed in this time. Absolutely needed in this time.
No matter your relating style.
No matter your it's not even it isn't really about, it's not really about the title at the end. I love that we brought this up. That's what probably got you into this room, because you're like, polyamory, But at the core of you are a human. You are a soul in a human bodysuit, okay? And being a mature adult in this lifetime right now, in this time, is the minority. Being a mature embodied adult is the minority, okay? Because so many people in these spaces, and I've actually removed myself from such spaces that claim to be masquerading sexuality as enlightenment. And here's the thing I'm going to bring in as a somatic practitioner. Integrating the mind, the breath, the sound, the movement, your soul, and understanding your cosmic blueprint is why you're here. If you do not know yourself deeply, if you have not self-actualized, you don't take time to get to know yourself, that is not empowerment. And I want you to be empowered in your body as a being in relationship. You want a soulmate union, but you're giving your power away to the boy over here that's not giving you the time of day during your period. Girl, you're not going, if you're continually giving yourself that energy, you're going to get that. Like, do you want that? If you're going to continue to surround yourself with people who just polyfuckery and don't honor you and your soul and your emotions and, you know, don't make you feel safe in their presence, like, girl, let's talk about it. Because here's the thing, you want to hold space for other people, but you're not holding yourself, and you're giving your power away to men that don't deserve to be in your presence. Just saying. Your presence is the opportunity to reveal the goddess, and if you want to reveal the goddess, it requires you to emotionally mature. It really invites you to take a look at your own mirror and your own reflection and face yourself. And if you want to be a priestess, which is someone who holds space for others as they traverse realms of consciousness, that's going to require you to go into the depth of your own grief. And so many people are masquerading in the realm of sexuality by not facing that. So I'll just say, I'm saying the truth in love. I'm kind of like wanted to bring this home and talk about the shadow realm, because yes, like love all these like facts and I love it. But I want to acknowledge that there's a lot of unconscious shadows at play in such spaces, and we are committed to ethical hedonism. We are very committed to seeing you rise in your transformative next level. Like the men and women that we work with, I call to a higher standard. Like we don't let things slide. Wouldn't you agree? I don't let.
Well, here again, the job of a coach is to ask you the tough questions. Absolutely. Yeah. It's not to people please the client. No, it's to help them grow and evolve into the next level. Yeah. And you spoke into it. So initiations, you see, for women too, for men and women. Yep. What's really been lacking in our modern culture and why relationships don't last and the divorce rate is so high is there's like a lack of initiations throughout people's life to prepare them for this moment. As you mentioned, you know, it's purity culture, it's abstinence, it's the opposite of preparedness. And where we see different relating styles, polyamorous style relating styles thrive, like in some of these ancient indigenous cultures, there is very much village support and rites of passage that a boy goes through to become a man, that a girl goes through to become a woman. Just like modern day, right? We have the maiden, the mother, right?
Yep. The priestess,
the knight, the
seductress.
king. Absolutely. That's what's missing really is these rites of passage, and these types of relationships thrive in cultures that still retain rites of passage.
Yeah. It really, in rites of passage, it's calling you to a next level version of yourself. And when relationships dissolve, usually it's because either someone's evolved or there's not enough accountability and growth. And without growth, there's just stagnation, and your soul knows when you're not growing.
Absolutely.
And your soul will actually start to rift things up. The universe will like cosmically changing things in your world, sometimes without your permission. My Saturn return, for example. And all I had to do, the only choice I had was to surrender. And surrender is the key in all of this. So will you surrender to your transformation? Will you surrender to the reality that you're being challenged in this talk show today? Will you surrender to the reality that maybe everything you've known growing up around monogamy and that God is, you know, the Christian world bubble that you've been in has impacted your ability to see beyond. And here's the thing, your brain has the power. There's neurotransmitters, there's brain networks that are here to challenge you and help you grow. And that's where we're like initiators, aren't we? We're alchemists.
Alchemists. I
Yeah.
like that. We specialize in personal transformation.
Yeah.
So reach out when you're ready. Reach out before you're ready. That's even more fun.
Lean in.
You can find Kendall at the Tantric Mystic _ on Instagram, and you can find me at Andre Night Awakening.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys plug into our universe. We're at tantricawakening.net. There are links there for you to join our mailing list. We're building a social media network for people that view life, love, and evolution differently. We invite you to be a part of it. You can join the waiting list. We'll let you know when that launches. And reach out via DM, you guys. Let's continue this conversation, because we as a society are evolving. We as a species are evolving. Like, the conversation doesn't stop here. This is meant to be the start of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And, one final thought, love boldly.
Yeah. Nothing worth going through is going to be easy, but if you lean into the uncomfortability of the moment, that's where you met with your humanity. You're not meant to be perfect. You're meant to be real. You're meant to be messy and wild and full of exuberant joy and exuberant grief that sometimes feels like an overwhelm. But what we're all about is holding space. If you need to be held, we'll catalyze you, help you to hold yourself. Because until you hold yourself, there's going to be, you're giving your power away. We got to come back into sacred sovereignty. Tantric union begins within yourself. And when you devote that remembrance, you remember that, you are going to be able to call in and therefore receive the soulmate union, the tribe, the kindredness. And if this resonates with you, a frequency or a vibe, awesome. We'd love to meet you, connect. So,
till next time.
Bye.